The words left his mouth so easily, as if he were talking about the weather, as if I weren't sitting right next to him at that table in front of our friends. They all laughed. I said nothing. I stood up slowly, placed my wine glass on the table, and walked to the restroom. My legs were shaking, but my face was calm, serene. I closed the restroom door, leaned against the sink, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. 31 years old, a pediatrician, Dr. Ariana Cruz, respected at Chicago General Hospital. A woman who saves lives every day, and my own husband had just destroyed mine in front of everyone. My name is Ariana Cruz. I'm 31, and this is the story that changed my life forever. Chicago has always been my city. I was born here, studied here, built my career here. The brownstones of Lincoln Park, the smell of Garrett popcorn in the morning, the biting winter wind off the lake, this was all my life before I met Victor. I took a deep breath, opened my purse, and pulled out my keychain, a small silver stethoscope charm my grandmother gave me when I got into medical school. I squeezed it in my hand. "You are stronger than you think, my girl," she used to tell me. But in that moment, I didn't feel strong. I felt humiliated, small, invisible. Victor and I had been married for 5 years. 5 years in which I worked 12, 14-hour shifts in the pediatric ER. 5 years in which he was trying. When we met, he was finishing his MBA. He never finished it. Then he said he was going to start a business. He never started it. Then he said he was going to find a job at a serious company. The serious company never came. And I kept paying for everything: the rent, groceries, electricity, the dinners with our friends. What a deceptive word. Because that night, I discovered I was never part of anything. I returned to the table. They were all still laughing. Victor placed his hand on mine as if it were a tender gesture. "Are you okay, honey?" I looked him in the eyes. And in that moment, something inside me broke, but not with sadness. With clarity. "Perfectly fine," I replied, and smiled. Because in that instant, I decided something that would change everything. Before it all turned to ashes, there was light. 6 years ago, I was 25, just having finished my pediatric residency. I was exhausted, proud, and in love with my profession. Every child I saved, every mother who hugged me crying with gratitude, all of it filled me in a way nothing else could. I rented a small apartment in Lincoln Park. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Everything I had, I earned on my own. My family was humble. My dad worked as a mechanic, my mom sold homemade pies at the market. They never gave me money for college, but they gave me something better: the certainty that I could do it. Then I met Victor at a distant cousin's wedding in Oakbrook. I didn't want to go. I had worked a 36-hour shift and just wanted to sleep. But my mom insisted, "Come on, honey. You need a break." So I went. And there he was, Victor Vance, tall, well-dressed, with that easy smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He asked about my job and seemed genuinely interested. He told me about his plans: finish his MBA, open his consulting firm, build something big. It all sounded so possible. We started dating. At first, everything was perfect. He always suggested nice places, and I always paid. But it didn't bother me. He was studying. I had a stable income. It seemed fair. "When I finish my MBA, everything will change," he'd say. "I'm going to give you everything you deserve." And I believed him. We got married 2 years later. A simple wedding in the garden of a venue in Elmhurst. I wore a white dress I bought at a boutique downtown. It wasn't expensive, but I felt beautiful. Victor cried when he saw me walk toward him. "You're the love of my life," he told me that night. The months passed. Victor's MBA program stretched on. I kept paying the rent, the groceries, the bills. It's temporary, I told myself. But temporary became a year, then 2, then 3. Victor finally finished his MBA. "Now the opportunities will come," he told me. But the opportunities never came. He said companies weren't responding, that the market was tough. Meanwhile, I kept working double shifts, triple shifts. One early morning, a 4-year-old boy came in with severe pneumonia. I worked on him for hours, managed to stabilize him. When I left the room at 6 a.m., my scrubs were soaked with sweat. I got home. Victor was asleep. The kitchen was dirty. I sat on the sofa and for the first time, I felt something strange, not anger yet, just a question: what am I building here? The fractures never arrive screaming. They come in silence, in small details you ignore because you don't want to see them. The first fracture came on a Wednesday. I hadn't slept in 2 days. A flu outbreak had flooded the pediatric ER. When I got home at 9 p.m., Victor was in the living room with 3 friends. Beer bottles, snacks, a football game. The place smelled like cigarette smoke. Honey, you're here. Come say hi to the guys. I just wanted them to leave. But I smiled, waved, and went straight to the bedroom. Then I heard the laughter from the living room. After I showered, Victor came in. Hey, honey. You got any cash? The guys and I are going to order some pizzas. Don't you have any? Nah, I'm out. But you just got paid, right? I gave him $50. Thanks, honey. You're the best. The fractures kept coming. A week later, Victor asked for $200 for a digital marketing course. It's an investment. The course was never mentioned again. A month later, he needed $100 for an online diploma. Also never mentioned again. But the outings with his friends continued. Beers on Wednesdays, dinners on Fridays, video games until dawn. The second fracture was worse. On a rare Saturday off, I decided to make slow-cooked short ribs, Victor's favorite. I spent the whole morning cooking, set the table carefully. Victor came home at 3 p.m. He didn't ask what I had cooked. He just sat down, picked up his phone, and started eating while texting. How was your meeting? I asked. Fine, nothing concrete yet. He kept looking at his phone, chewing without looking at me. When he finished, he left his plate on the table and went to watch TV. I cleared the dishes, and as I washed, I felt something inside me start to crack. The third fracture was different. At the hospital, my phone buzzed. A text from my bank, transaction declined. Insufficient funds. I opened the banking app. Someone had transferred $500 from my savings to my checking account. And from there, someone had withdrawn $450 in cash. Victor was the only one who had access to my card. I'd given it to him months ago when he said he needed to buy something urgently and I was at the hospital. I called him. Victor, did you take money from my account? Silence. Oh, yeah. I forgot to tell you. I needed to pay for a few things. It's almost $500. I'll pay you back next week. Victor, that money was from my savings. Something urgent came up. Don't get mad. We'll talk later. I'm busy. And he hung up. That night, I told him we needed to talk. You know what, Ariana? I'm tired of you throwing that in my face all the time. I haven't said anything. You don't have to. It's written all over your face. He grabbed his jacket and walked out. I was left alone, squeezing the silver stethoscope charm in my hand. And for the first time, I began to wonder if being with someone who makes you feel alone isn't worse than being alone for real. Everything changed after that night. When Victor fell asleep, I took my phone and reviewed the transactions from the last 6 months. Small withdrawals I hadn't noticed, $30 here, $50 there. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Charges at restaurants, bars, video game stores, sports betting apps. In 6 months, Victor had spent over $3,000 of my money. I took screenshots of everything. I saved them in a hidden folder on my phone named Hospital Patient Charts. From that day on, I was a detective in my own home. One Friday, I told Victor I had a double shift and wouldn't be home until Saturday, but my shift ended at 6 p.m. At 7, I came home silently. Victor was in the living room with 2 men. On the table were beers, cash, and betting slips. Victor was leaning over a laptop with a tense expression. Come on, man. Place the bet. They're about to close. One of the men laughed. If you lose again, you're screwed. Victor let out a fake laugh. She'll never know. She works all the time. She has no idea. I left silently and walked to the Starbucks on the corner. I sat by the window and cried, not because I was surprised, but because I finally had confirmation. Victor wasn't looking for a job. He was gambling away my money and lying about everything. That night, I wrote down everything I had seen. Friday, October 14th, 7:15 p.m., Victor at home with 2 men gambling. Said she works all the time. She has no idea. The following days were strange. When Victor asked for money for gas, I gave it to him, but I took a screenshot. When he told me he was going to a job interview, I checked his real-time location. He'd agreed to share his location with me months ago. He never imagined I would use it for this. And I discovered the interviews were lies. Sometimes he was at friends' houses, other times at bars. Once at a casino in Hammond, Indiana. One day, I found a shoebox under the mattress. Inside were lost betting slips, bar receipts, pawn shop loan slips, and a notebook, a ledger of debts. Victor owed money to 5 different people, a total of $5,000. I took photos of every page, then put everything back exactly where it was. Weeks passed. I saved every rent payment receipt in my name, every grocery receipt, every bill. I opened a new bank account without Victor knowing and started depositing a small part of my salary there. Something inside me knew this wasn't going to end well. And when the time came, I was going to be ready. The truth never arrives whole. It comes in pieces, each one hurting more than the last. I had been documenting in silence for 3 months. But I still didn't know how deep the hole was, until one Tuesday. I had the afternoon off. Victor wasn't expecting me home until 7. I walked up the stairs and heard voices. Victor was on the phone, his voice tense, desperate. I know. I told you I'd pay you this week. No, I don't have it all right now, but I can give you half. My blood ran cold. Look, my wife gets paid on Friday. As soon as she does, I'll wire it to you. She has a good job. She's a doctor. It won't be a problem. Friday, without fail, I'll send you the $1,500 and the other $1,500 the Friday after. $3,000 he had already promised for my money without asking. I went to my email and found one from 3 days ago. Your personal loan application for $5,000 has been approved. I hadn't applied for any loan. Victor had access to my online banking. He had applied for a loan in my name without telling me. I called the bank. The application was submitted on October 15 at 11:47 a.m. while I was in surgery operating on a little girl with appendicitis. That night, I confronted him. We need to talk. The loan. His smile wavered. The $5,000 loan you applied for in my name without telling me. It's not theft. We're married. It's our money. It's not our money. It's my money. I work. I pay for everything. I have a debt, $3,000. And the other $2,000, other gambling debts. How long have you been gambling? 2 years. But it's not serious. It's just been bad luck lately. I laughed, a bitter, broken laugh. You've been gambling away my money for 2 years and you call it bad luck? I walked out and slept on the couch, the silver stethoscope charm clutched in my hand. I wasn't sad anymore. I was furious. And fury, I discovered that night, is so much more powerful than pain. 3 weeks later came Saturday night, the night that changed everything. Victor had been insisting we go to dinner with his friends. I finally agreed, not because I wanted to, but because something told me I needed to be there. We arrived at a restaurant in the West Loop. 4 people were at the table, Rick and Sophie, Mike and Danielle. After the second glass of wine, Rick said, "So, Victor, when are you going to let us in on this business you've been talking about?" Victor laughed nervously, "Soon. Just finalizing a few details." Sophie looked at me. "And you, Ariana, how do you put up with this one? It must be exhausting being married to a dreamer." "He's not a dreamer," I replied calmly. "He's a gambler." Silence fell over the table. "He's been gambling for 2 years, at casinos, on sports betting, and losing." Victor shot me a furious look. "That's enough, Ariana." But I didn't stop. Rick cleared his throat. "Look, Ariana, we all know Victor has his issues, but that doesn't mean you have to embarrass him in public." "Embarrass him?" "Look, we get that you're upset, but Victor is our friend, and frankly, we all think you're a little controlling. You're always working, always tired. Poor Victor doesn't even have room to breathe." And then Victor spoke. "You guys just don't know what it's like living with her. It's exhausting. She never has time for me." And then he said the words that changed everything. "I only married her out of pity. No one else wanted her." The world stopped. All the noise in the restaurant disappeared. Only those words remained. Seriously, I met her at that wedding and she was all alone. No one was talking to her. I felt sorry for her. I thought, well, someone's got to do her a favor. More laughter. And then it turned out she was a doctor. I thought, not bad. At least she has money. And they all laughed. All of them except Danielle, who looked at me with something like pity. I stood up with dignity, took my purse, and walked to the restroom. I squeezed the silver stethoscope charm. "You are stronger than you think, my girl." And in that moment, something inside me changed. It was absolute clarity. I finally understood what I had to do. I came out 5 minutes later and walked back to the table. They were all still laughing. I opened my purse and took out a manila envelope. I dropped it in the middle of the table. "Open it," I said. Inside were rent payment receipts, all in my name. Bills, all paid by me. Bank statements showing all his transfers. Screenshots of conversations where he asked for money. Photos of the betting slips. Photos of the notebook with his debts. The document for the $5,000 loan applied for in my name without permission. Everything. Victor turned pale. I leaned over the table and looked him straight in the eye. "I only married you out of pity. No one else wanted you. The silence was absolute. And tomorrow at 10 a.m., we are signing the divorce papers. I took out a legal summon and dropped it in front of him. You'd better show up. Because if you don't, I will proceed with a fault divorce for financial abandonment, and you will lose absolutely everything. I straightened up, looked at the others. Have a lovely evening. And I walked out, my head held high, without looking back. Finally, after so many years of pretending, I was free. That night wasn't over. Victor came home at 1 a.m. and burst in like a hurricane. What the hell was that, Oriana? It was the truth. You had no right to humiliate me like that. And you had the right to say you married me out of pity? To laugh at me in front of everyone? I was joking. It wasn't a joke, Victor. It was cruelty. His face softened into that pleading voice he used to manipulate me. Ariana, please. I love you. I know I messed up, but I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. I turned and walked toward my suitcase by the door. Where are you going? To my parents' house. Victor stood in front of the door, blocking my way. You're not leaving. If you leave, everyone is going to think I'm a failure. And there it was. He didn't care about losing me. He cared about losing his image. Let me pass or I'm calling the police. He laughed. Go ahead. I'll tell them you threatened me, that you attacked me. I took out my phone and pressed record. Victor, are you threatening me? He stopped. He finally understood what I was doing. I screamed, help! Help me. The neighbor, Mr. Henderson, stepped into the hallway. What's going on, doctor? He's holding me against my will. He won't let me leave. Mr. Henderson looked at Victor. Young man, let her pass. Victor finally stepped aside. I got to my parents' house at 2 a.m. when my mom opened the door. I finally broke. She hugged me, and I cried for everything I had lost, for all the wasted years. But I also cried with relief. Because finally, I was free. On Monday, I called Monica Reed, a divorce lawyer. I need to file for divorce urgently. Do you have documentation? I have everything. She reviewed every document. Doctor, this is a solid case. With this documentation, we can file for a fault divorce, grounds, financial infidelity, threats, misuse of marital assets. If he doesn't contest it, 3 months. If he fights it, 6 months max. I want to proceed. Victor started calling me 20, 30 times a day. I didn't answer. The texts range from I love you to this is your fault to if you don't drop this, you're going to regret it. I saved every message and sent them to my lawyer. Perfect, she said. This is harassment. We'll use it. Victor tried to destroy my reputation, telling my colleagues I was having a nervous breakdown, that I needed psychiatric help. So I got ahead of it. I sent a message to my friends, colleagues, and family explaining everything. The replies came within minutes. I support you. You're so brave. I always knew something was off. I wasn't alone. 2 weeks later, my lawyer called. Victor has agreed to an unconditional divorce. He waives any right to your assets. He just wants this to be over quickly. Why? Because we showed him all the evidence. We explained that if we went to trial, not only would he lose, but we could press criminal charges for the fraudulent loan. He got scared. That Friday, I arrived at the courthouse with my mom. Victor was alone, without his friends, without his arrogance. He looked smaller. We signed the papers. The judge officially declared our marriage dissolved. And I walked out a single woman, free, reborn. Karma doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes in silence. Victor lost his social circle when Rick discovered Victor had borrowed money and never paid it back. The friend group dissolved. The debts caught up with him. He had to leave the apartment I paid for, moved into a rented room in a rougher neighborhood. His reputation was destroyed. The story of what happened that night spread. Every time someone Googled his name, the gossip would pop up. No one wanted to hire him. His family found out. His mother sought me out at the hospital. I raised him better than that. Can I ask you something? Do you think he can change? I think people can change, but only if they want to, and only if they face the consequences of their actions. Victor found a job as an administrative assistant. 2 weeks later, they fired him. He missed 3 days without calling. When he came back, he smelled like alcohol. Victor hadn't changed. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. 2 weeks ago, I ran into him. He was sitting on a bench downtown, his clothes wrinkled, his beard unkempt. Our eyes met. He looked down. And I kept walking. I felt nothing. Because Victor was no longer part of my life. He was just a lesson. A year after the divorce, my life was completely different. I was still Dr. Ariana Cruz. I still worked at Chicago General Hospital. I still saved lives. I still loved my profession. But now when I came home after a long shift, I didn't feel that weight on my chest. There was no one waiting to ask me for money, no one to minimize my exhaustion, no one to make me feel my efforts weren't enough. There was only peace. I redecorated my apartment completely. Nothing from that era remained. Now the walls were white with mint green accents. There were plants in every corner, new books on the shelves, a hammock by the window where I sat and read on Sundays. On the wall, I hung a framed print. The peace I have today is worth more than any blood tie. My relationship with my parents grew stronger. Every Sunday I went to their house in Pilsen for dinner. "You look different, honey," my mom told me one Sunday. "Lighter, like you were carrying a sack of rocks and you finally put it down." At work, I was promoted to head of the pediatric emergency department, not because they felt sorry for me, but because I deserved it. I also started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I stayed so long, why I ignored the red flags, how to avoid repeating the same patterns. My therapist, Dr. Campos, helped me see things I couldn't see on my own. "Ariana, you weren't stupid. You were loyal. And loyalty isn't a bad thing. It becomes bad when that loyalty turns into self-destruction. And how do I know the difference? When you start losing pieces of yourself to keep someone else afloat, that's the difference." 2 weeks ago, a young resident sat down next to me in the hospital lounge. "Dr. Cruz, how are you so strong?" There were tears in her eyes. "What's wrong?" "My boyfriend. He's making me feel like I'm not enough. That I work too much. And I feel like I'm losing pieces of myself." "Does he work?" "No, he's finding his path." "Do you support him financially?" "Yes." "And does he value your effort?" "He says he does, but you don't feel it." She nodded. I took her hand. "Listen to me carefully. You are not responsible for saving anyone. Your only responsibility is to yourself. And if someone makes you feel small, it's not because you are small. It's because they need you to feel that way so they can feel big." She cried. "But I love him." I loved him, too. And it almost destroyed me. Because love isn't enough if it doesn't come with respect, with reciprocity. "And how did you know when to leave?" I smiled sadly. "When I finally realized that being with someone who made me feel alone was worse than being alone for real." Today is a sunny Saturday in Chicago. I'm in my apartment, windows open, a book in my hands, and I feel whole. Not because I have everything, but because I finally have myself. I took the silver stethoscope charm from my pocket and watched it shine in the sunlight. "You are stronger than you think, my girl." I smiled. "I know, Grandma. Now I know." My silence almost destroyed me. My truth saved me. I no longer make myself small so others can feel big. The peace I have today is worth more than any blood tie. And the most powerful woman isn't the one who never falls, it's the one who falls, gets up, dusts herself off, and keeps walking with her head held high.